Welcome to the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Lawyer Minds is an ever-growing ecosystem for all the resources modern lawyers need. As the official Lawyer Minds podcast, we'll discuss everything from the latest happenings on the website to industry news. Get ready. Here we go. It's time to dive into the minds of successful lawyers. Here are your hosts, Tad Thomas and Mike Campbell.
Michael, I think you found a new profession, didn't you?
Oh, man, you mean cigar selling?
Yes.
Swapping, everything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I enjoy it. I certainly enjoy it. It's, you have bourbon, enjoy bourbon. I know a lot of trial lawyers do. The thing that complements it, in my opinion, is a good cigar. And you and I sat on the patio for about 8 hours a few weeks ago.
That was a rough day, man. It was a rough day. What was it? 70 degrees and sunny.
I was telling some folks around town, I was like, this guy travels the world, which we'll talk about here momentarily. And he joined us in Rocheport, Missouri for a day. And they're all like, good. He needs to put his feet up and relax every once in a while.
Well,
I think the same thing.
If you offer me that general store carrot cake that I had there, I'll come back often.
It's really good. I mean, it's handmade, from scratch. And then you get to, I sat out there on Saturday and Sunday, did the same thing. It's a great place to work. And like I said, I really enjoy cigars. Finding out last night, I was reading about all the different tobacco leaves from Nicaragua and where they're grown. And it's just a fascinating thing for me anyway. So
maybe we ought to have a podcast dedicated to lawyers and cigars. And we'll get a panel and just talk about smoking cigars.
I think, that and bourbon. I think it would be wildly successful. I think you would get a lot of people who are really into either one or the other or both. And for me anyway, similar to what we're doing here with the podcast, cigars are an opportunity for people to just kind of sit around and talk and conversate and put their hair down a little bit. And so, you're having a cigar with someone that you normally wouldn't even have a conversation with. The guy that's working at the factory comes into the lounge and he's sitting with, a professor or a doctor, and they're having just, straight conversations. And we're missing a lot of that, right? We miss a lot of that dialogue. And I think that's, a common, I think cigars or bourbon or anything that can bring people together is, in my opinion, a good thing.
And talking about meeting new people and visiting, we have on the podcast today, Ana Romero from Spain, who I got to meet in one of my AAJ trips. She is the current president of PEOPIL, the Pan-European Organization of Personal Injury Lawyers. It was one of my favorite trips ever, and you'll get to see, you get to talk with Ana, and you'll see how amazing that organization is, especially with her as the head of it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I know as part of your presidency, you get to visit a lot of places and meet with a lot of people, but I thought this was really cool. This is an awesome opportunity. When you were telling me you're going to Copenhagen, I just thought, what a life.
Yeah. Well, it was 48 hours of travel for being there 48 hours. So that was, not the best. However, for the 48 hours that I was there was a lot of fun. It was one of the, greatest organizations I've been around. Everybody was just absolutely wonderful. And, I met lawyers from Berlin and from London and from Ireland and Spain, and talking to them about, the differences in laws and the differences in our practice. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I'm a history nerd. I would love to just sit with them and talk about, okay, well, how did this develop so that it could inform me about, how to present a specific argument to a judge. I don't know that I would sit there and talk about how common law developed in Scotland or England and then present that to a jury, but it's certainly good. It's good information to have so you can sort of think on your feet a little bit about, oh, this is why we do what we do.
Yeah. All right. So on to the interview of Ana Romero. The Lawyer Minds podcast brought to you by Gavel Video. Some companies do videography, but Gavel Video does high-quality cinematography to highlight your firm's successes. Also brought to you by Legal Insights, providing expert digital marketing for law firms. And finally brought to you by iLitigate, trial presentation software for trial lawyers by trial lawyers. And now to our program. Ana, welcome to the podcast. You're our first international visitor.
Oh, really? Thank you very much, Dad. I'm thrilled to be here with you and Mike. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to discuss issues over the ocean.
Absolutely. So I've gotten to do a lot of fun things as president of AAJ, but one of the things that I found most fun was I got to come and visit with you and a PEOPIL crew in Copenhagen a couple of months ago, and it was so much fun, and I'm just so glad to get you on the podcast to talk about it a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we were so grateful for you coming over to Copenhagen with Linda. I know it's a lot to add on to your heavy burden with your presidency. So we were so happy to host you there, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it and that we got the opportunity to exchange more information. We do this often when we go to the AJ conferences, but it's glad to have our American colleagues over in Europe as well.
Well, thank you for having us. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself first. You practice, where you practice, your type of practice, and where you went to school.
Yes. So I'm a personal injury lawyer. I am based in Spain, in the south of Spain, in Malaga. We have a practice that covers all areas of personal injury. So we deal with anything from aviation to medical malpractice to road traffic accidents, even professional negligence. We also do some professional negligence, but we are very, very much focused on the international aspect of personal injury. The reason for this is that I started my career actually in the UK. So I practiced in the UK for nearly 11 years before coming to Spain. So that gave me a true international perspective of personal injury. And for that reason, I think probably 80% of our caseload is international. So that means accidents abroad or accidents in Spain that are litigated in other jurisdictions. So before going to the UK and working there in the UK, I studied in the university here in Spain, in the north of Spain, in Oviedo, which is my hometown. But I also did part of my university in the UK, and I think that's where everything started. But I come from quite a long history of lawyers in my family. My grandma was a lawyer. And my father, my uncles, I have lots of family who are in the law, and to me it was something that I was looking forward joining that line in my family. When I hear about the stories of my grandma practicing in Spain when there was no women at all in law. I mean, women were hardly working in Spain, but you wouldn't even find. It was even more difficult to find a female lawyer. So for me, that was a true inspiration. And step by step, I've tried to honor her memory, and I love being involved in the international side of things. I love how much inspiration it brings to my practice. It's great to be able to discuss with you, with colleagues in the US, but also, with colleagues all over Europe, how different our practices are, how different our jurisdictions may be in so many aspects, but at the same time, there's always a connection, and there is so much inspiration that, that makes you a better professional, a better lawyer, and, it brings a lot that you can then put into your cases, and it's for the benefit of your clients.
So I think that's wonderful about your mother. What a great story. I want to hear more about that sometime too. But tell me just, what do you think, I guess, what are your observations about the biggest differences between where you practice there in Europe and our practices in the United States?
Yes. So, we have, obviously the source of law in Europe and in the US is so different that we have different procedures, we have different sources of law. I think probably the biggest the major difference is, as we were discussing before and in so many occasions, the fact that we don't have jury trials. And I know that for you this is something very, very precious. In Europe, in some countries, like in Spain, for example, there are jury trials only for very serious criminal offenses. So for things like murder, or but nothing related to civil claims. So that, I think, that probably is the biggest difference. I know that for you, jury trials is something that you really want to protect. That is something so important for you that you wouldn't understand other way of practicing. But for us, it's something that we are, always very curious of learning about, how that works, because we don't have anything like that in Europe. And it's very much focused on the judge. So the judge is the one that will take a decision. We have the positions, we have, oral trials and everything like that. But it's the judge that would take the decision and will issue the judgment. Another very important difference, which makes a huge difference in terms of damages, is that we don't have punitive damages. So again, that is something that for us is when we hear about these huge figures that you get for your clients in the US, we are like, wow, we wish we had something like that, really. But we have nothing like that. I mean, and actually, for example, when we have tried to enforce US judgments here, for example, in Spain, we face that barrier that Spanish courts will not accept the enforcement of punitive damages because it's something alien to our system. We have other punitive tools like punitive interest against insurers and so on, but it doesn't go anywhere near your punitive damages. So I think that's something that we are always very intrigued, and we like to hear all these stories, because at the same time, it makes us want to somehow get a tool similar to that for our clients here in Europe. But I think it's an inspiration, but I think we will not be able to have something like punitive damages in Europe.
Right. So I'm curious. So you do some medical malpractice work, medical negligence work, and so do I. So just walk me through what the process would be there. So you have a family that comes to you that have been a victim of medical negligence. What's the process in Spain? I know here we, file suit, take depositions, have experts.
Mm-hmm.
How do you proceed?
We have a discovery pre-trial procedure, but again, nothing like yours. We won't be able to get even, half of the evidence that you get. For us, the evidence that we can get from the defendant is limited to certain categories that are established by law. So we would be able to get, for example, medical records and, certain things, but we wouldn't be able to get, a full discovery as you would be able to do in the US. So that, to start with, limits us in terms of evidence. So when the family of the victim, or the victim himself or herself comes to us, the first thing would be to try to gather as much evidence as we can in terms of what happened. What, for us, probably the biggest source of evidence would be the medical records. I don't know if it happens to you in the US, but sometimes when we get the medical records, we can see that these have been altered, or there are things that should be there that are not there, and it's always we always get surprises with the medical records. But that would be the first step. Thereafter, we will also get medical experts involved to give us an opinion as to how things were done, if they were done in accordance with the lex artis, if there were some, for example, even if there is something missing from the medical evidence that has been disclosed, that should be there. That's something that we will be able to use against the defendant. But the medical experts are crucial for us in these cases, because they are the ones that are going, to tell us what way to go, what our arguments are going to be, and how the claim is going to be argued from the point of view of liability. If the medical expert evidence is supportive, then we will go ahead and proceed with the assessment of damages. We will include in the claim both pecuniary and non-pecuniary losses. So pain and suffering for the injuries, or if it's a disease, for bereavement. This is all things that we will be able to claim for. Fortunately for us, at least in Spain, there's no tariffs. That we have some tariffs in some jurisdictions in Europe, certainly for road traffic accidents we do in Spain, but for medical malpractice we don't. So that gives us more flexibility to assess damages in terms of pain and suffering, and we are not limited exclusively to what would be given to a victim of a road traffic accident. And then for pecuniary losses as well, the principle of full restitution will govern the claim. So we should be able to claim everything that has all pecuniary losses that have arisen as a result of the medical malpractice. And once the claim is ready, we will try to get into negotiations with the defendant, not always successful, or very often not successful.
Right.
And if not, then we'll go to court, and we have it's true that the procedures in Spain, legal or the court procedures, are very formal, probably more formal than what you're used to in the US. We don't have so much possibility of explaining our arguments in such a strong way. We are quite limited by what the court would admit. And then, as I said before, it will be the judge who will be taking a decision and will be issuing the judgment without any jury trial.
Okay. So I guess you have such a difference. Do you take depositions over there?
We do, but in a more limited way. They say, at the end of the day, we are also limited by what the judge is going to accept. So the judge himself or herself will tell us, you can get this evidence or that evidence. I will accept this or that. But we are bound by the judge's ruling on what evidence is going to be heard in court. So if the judge decides not to accept, certain witness or certain documentary evidence, we won't be able to present that.
So is there the judge that ultimately hears the trial? Is that the same one that is also issuing rulings about what evidence can and cannot be discovered?
Yes, exactly. We have like a preliminary hearing where the judge will issue a ruling saying what evidence can be heard in the final hearing. So it would be the same judge taking a decision on both what evidence they want to hear, and then taking the final decision on liability and damages.
Man, that sounds, wow. That just, it's just a different process for us here. Yes, and you're talking about the limited amount of discovery and how we get frustrated with just having the limitations we have. It's pretty incredible the way you're able to still
Yes.
represent people and do good things.
Very challenging, I can tell you. Yes, I know that we all have our challenges, everywhere, but
Right.
it's true that for us, all those restrictions, they bring an extra, burden to the lawyer, because you don't have so much, scope to move around or to get evidence, or it's all very framed into the what the judge is going to accept or not.
And when you go to the final hearing, you can tell me if there's a difference between Spain and England, but my understanding is then the lawyer who has worked up the case may not necessarily be the same lawyer or solicitor who actually presents the case to the judge. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, that we discussed also before that we know there are differences between Europe and the US, but then within Europe, we have so many different systems as well. So, for example, this scenario that you were just describing, that would be, for example, the case of the UK. In the UK, you've got solicitors and you've got barristers. So the solicitors will prepare the case with the client, will gather the evidence, but then it would be the barrister who would advocate in court. So, for example, that's the case of the UK. But again, that's something that doesn't happen everywhere else in Europe. For example, in Spain, it is the same lawyer who will, deal with the client, gather the evidence, and advocate in court. So we will do the whole thing. And that's mostly the case in all other jurisdictions in Europe. I think probably because of, there's these two systems that we have in Europe, the common law system and the civil law system. So all countries that are whose civil liability system has arisen from the civil code are more formal, and they have this, they don't have this dual representation. The lawyer does everything. However, the common law provides for this dual representation, and the figure of the barrister and the solicitor is very specific to the UK. They work together. They all have their specific tasks and in the case, and both of them will be involved in the case in different ways.
So, Anna, I met you through an organization called PEOPIL, and you're currently the president of PEOPIL. Tell us about PEOPIL.
Yes. This is something, I'm very, very fond of. I'm very, grateful for the opportunity that the organization gave me to become president. I've been president for 1 year now. And PEOPIL is the pan-European organization of personal injury lawyers. So this is an organization that brings together lawyers from all European jurisdictions and abroad as well. As you know, we have so many American friends who are members of PEOPIL, and we also have members in other countries. We have members in South Africa, Australia, Mexico, Brazil. So it's Europe and beyond. And I think PEOPIL is an organization which has been growing from strength to strength over the years. It's really a forum for any lawyer who is practicing in personal injury and has an interest in cross-border litigation, or has some practice that involves some kind of international cases. Because I think it's not rare now that we get international cases, even if it's not the main part of our practice. But there's so many international implications in so many cases, in product liability, in people traveling around the world. They have accidents, and all these cases, they have an international perspective. So I think PEOPIL is a crucial tool for any lawyer who is dealing with these cases, who have an international perspective, an international point, because it gives you the opportunity, the organization gives you the opportunity not only to learn about how to deal with these cases and learn how your colleagues in other jurisdictions are dealing with personal injury cases, information which is great and it's crucial for you to and inspiring for you to to do new things in your country and new things in your own jurisdiction. But also it's a place where you can meet lawyers with whom you can work in these cases. So this is very important, having the contacts, having access to lawyers who are at the, at top level of personal injury in each country, and they all, we all share the same aim, which is, guaranteeing access to justice to our clients. So we work together, we inspire one another. We have these conferences, as you were mentioning before, Tad. You went to Copenhagen. We have a number of conferences along the year in different topics. We have medical negligence, product liability, RTA, tourism, aviation. And these are very well attended by colleagues in Europe, in the US, and we meet there, we learn, we inspire each other, and we meet, we make these connections, we make this network of lawyers who then can work together in cases for the benefit of their clients, because it's a true source of expertise. I think our members are very highly regarded in their areas of work, and we are very fortunate to have such top level lawyers and law practitioners. And we also have professors. We have people working in the law in other areas. But I think we are very, very fortunate to have all this knowledge and all this expertise that is can be accessed by all members. So yes, I'm so glad to be able to lead the organization, and for me it's something so close to my heart also, and I'm enjoying it so much.
So you've already been president for a year. How long do you
Yes.
have?
3 years.
3 years. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, it was some of the most fun that I've had as president of AAJ, coming to visit.
Yes, I think I omitted that part, but it's also a very, very fun organization. We have so much fun in these conferences, and we have, all when we come to the AAJ, I think the international section, probably everyone in the international section of AAJ is part of PEOPIL as well. So there's that connection, and the fun part of it is a very important part of the networking.
Yeah, so my friends make fun of me because I always go to bed early, but especially when I'm have jet lag going all the way over there. But the next morning when I woke up, I heard some stories about some karaoke and some dancing. Apparently the party lasted well into the evening.
Yes, it did. We had a very good night in Copenhagen, and I remember also we had the international reception in Seattle, which was also really, really good. So I think the international people always brings good vibes. So it's a good place to have fun. Yes,
absolutely. Everybody there was so wonderful, and I'm looking forward to when we have AAJ in Phoenix hosting the international section for a reception. It's going to be a great conference. So
yes, so much looking forward to that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ana. Really appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you in Phoenix, if not before.
Yes, that's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Tad and Mike. Thank you for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can't wait to go back to PEOPIL. As soon as I got back, I signed up to be a member of the organization. I'm going to Dublin next fall when they have their conference there.
Yeah, it's exciting. And while we're first of all, I'm going with you.
Come on.
Even if it's a stowaway, you can put me in a little suitcase, or you can ship me over in advance in a box. I'm going to see our friend Liam, who's going to be there. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things that I want to know more about is, so we spend a lot of time talking. You spend a lot of time in DC talking with legislators there. I spend a lot of time in Missouri talking with legislators here. Hey, do we want to have this European system where a jury doesn't decide what your fate is? And, how does that land? What's the impact of that when you say, hey, they don't have the things that we have and that are being attempted to be taken away from us? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And so do you want to go that route? Because here's what they do. Do you want to be, so I'm just trying to figure out because that just seems really nerve-wracking to me, to not have the ability to talk with the jury and to have a judge deciding what he or she does or doesn't want to hear at the end of the case.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the times that we've drawn a judge that, we didn't care for one reason or another, and having the entire case, as opposed to just a motion and limiting your motion for summary judgment resting on the one judge, having the entire case, I can see cases where you would file and get the wrong judge and be like, all right, I'm out. It's done.
Bad case. Yeah.
So, bad draw, but, it really is interesting. I'm getting ready for my first arbitration hearing. It's in Med Mal actually next week. And just the process of preparing is so different because the audience is different. And so, analyzing, your Q&As is going to be totally different. I'm not going to do 90% of the stuff I would normally do on cross, for an arbitrator. So it is totally different.
Yeah. And I was having a conversation on the patio while I was having a cigar. Mentioned this, I think, in the intro, that I was having a conversation with a guy who's running for office. He is business minded, would not agree with me on a lot of things, brought up tort reform. But then I explained to him, the smallest form of government is a school board and a jury box. You get to you basically get your voice heard in two ways in this country, and that is at the voting box and in the jury box. And that, that is, for me, a critical part of what makes this country great. And so I know we've had guests on to talk about that. And so it's just a good reminder that, wow, there's a large part of this world that does not have the ability to have people come in and decide fates. It's fascinating.
Mike, good podcast. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
All right. Later.
That wraps another episode of the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content Lawyer Minds has to offer and engage with us on social media. Your feedback on the show and ideas for future shows is always welcomed. See you next time.